hardly unusual for former presidents to speak at conventions, but for Bill Clinton to make the pitch for his wife, well, that was a tailor-made narrative for the press.
In the spring of 1971, I met a girl. Meanwhile, I was still trying to get her to marry me.
A truly remarkable speech. One of the things that you realize from the speech is, first of all, he still has it. He still is one of the great speech givers of this time.
I thought it was very effective. The old boy still can deliver, and he did.
I think the beginning of the speech was a controversial way to start, honestly. Talking, the girl, a girl. I gotta say that the top of the speech I found shocking and weird.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage of the Democratic Convention, Guy Benson, political editor at Town Hall and a Fox News contributor, and Crystal Ball, a television commentator and senior fellow at the New Leaders Council. So the media consensus was Bill Clinton gave a great speech, humanized his wife, except for Rachel Maddow, who found it shocking and rude. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, as you just played there, if you turn to CNN, glowing reviews, turn to Fox, glowing reviews. And I agreed with the glowing reviews, by the way. So it was surprising to hear what Rachel had to say. The other thing that was surprising, though, is not only did Rachel start out by saying that portion of the speech made her very uncomfortable, but the very first pundit that they turned to was Republican strategist Nicole Wallace, who they gave a lot of airtime to air very similar concerns. And it struck me, it was surprising to me that they would turn first to a Republican strategist to comment on Bill Clinton's speech. I can't imagine Fox turning to a Democratic strategist initially to comment on, say, Melania Trump's speech or Donald Trump's speech, for that matter. I know, but to start off with.
Okay, but so was it shocking and rude because he said, I met a girl, and used the word girl, and that's not politically correct? I was sort of shocked.
I was shocked that they were shocked, because I think for most Americans, they're fascinated by this marriage. The other concern was, I don't know how this landed in the living rooms across America, which is something else that Rachel said. And of course, we're riveted by these details. It also brings us back, and I'm not a huge Clinton fan. I backed Bernie in the primary. I called on Hillary not to run over a year ago. And now I've come around and I'll support her in the presidential election. But it made me feel more warmly towards them than I had felt in a very long time. So I think it was effective.
So the media loved Bubba, particularly in his role as a world statesman. But Clinton left a few things out of his timeline there, Monica, Paula, impeachment. The press didn't really seem to care.
I mean, it's a convention, so it's a pageant. So you're putting your best foot forward. So, of course, you're not going to mention the time that you had an affair in the Oval Office and got impeached for lying about it.
Not so much.
That's when you write a speech, you're probably like, maybe I'll leave that part out. I did think maybe it would have been useful to have just a nod to it, an acknowledgement of it.
Of the pain that he put her through, because this was ultimately not about him and his feelings. It was about her.
The thing is, he didn't do it, but she did. There was one line early in Hillary's speech that at least gave a nod to it. I thought a lot of baseball analogies have been employed talking about these speeches, whereas I thought Bill Clinton gave a grand slam speech. I remember having a sinking feeling in 2012. This was a solid extra base hit. The other thing I would say just about the Clintons generally, and that comment from Rachel Maddow, which I found just wholly bizarre, he was giving a speech as a spouse. He was giving a personal speech about his wife. If a woman, if a potential first lady had said, I met a boy, and blah, 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 we'd all say that's normal. That's that sounds right.
Which, by the way, for Bill Clinton to give a speech about someone else is
not about himself.
a lot.
Let's go on to a new inning, to use your baseball term. So President Obama got rave reviews, and then he got that really big hug from Hillary Clinton after he praised her to the skies. And I wonder in those rave reviews, and everyone knows Barack Obama knows how to give a speech, whether the media believed that Obama's more optimistic vision, and Hillary too tried to project optimism, whether that contrasts with what they see as Donald Trump's dark and divisive rhetoric.
I mean, there was definitely a very different energy message coming out of these two conventions, and I think it was covered that way. I'm not sure that the media did enough at the Democratic National Convention, now having been away for a whole 2 days. I'm not sure they did enough to put the sunshiny optimism in the context of the very real pain that people are still feeling around the country. I mean, now you have Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine traveling through Ohio and Pennsylvania, states that have been hard hit. And I would like to see how this very sunny, America's already great view landed with voters in those states.
So you're saying, Crystal, that the media kind of bought the sunny and optimistic words but didn't do enough to report that there's a reason that Donald Trump won the Republican nomination, which is a lot of anger and frustration out there among millions of Americans who are hurting. You think the press fell down on the job there?
I think that's right. I mean, I think there's still space to make that case. You know, they covered the words that were said at the convention, which were very optimistic, but I would like to see it put in more.
What happened to all those pundits who said that Hillary needed to separate herself from Barack Obama, and now the press says she's running for his third term, that she's really hugged him in more than just the literal sense?
Sure. Well, I think part of that is because we've seen his ratings improve. So part of that, I think a huge element of his improved ratings is the fact that he is more out of the spotlight, and you have Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump running for president, who are deeply, deeply unpopular people. So in contrast, in comparison, Obama doesn't look so bad to a lot of Americans. I thought Obama's speech was very good. As for the optimism question, though, there was this weird disconnect where it did seem like the optimism was maybe too over the top at the Democratic convention, given the fears that people have about national security issues and then also the GDP numbers that we just saw.
Right. Hillary Clinton cracking the glass ceiling by winning the nomination. Do you think that the media made too much or too little of the fact that this was a historic night, even though we all expected it for months?
I mean, there was definitely a nod to how historic the night was, but I didn't see any pieces really exploring what this meant for women, particularly women of Hillary's generation, or what it meant for the little girls that watched this on TV, or even the ones that were in the room. I didn't see historians talking about how we got to this point. I think there was a nervousness to go too over the top with that for fear of looking biased, like you're putting your finger on the scales for Hillary.
In just a few seconds, do you agree with that part?
For the most part, it's historic, you know, good for her. It didn't have the same feeling that Obama had in 08 in terms of the history-making gravity. And kind of baked into the cake because it's been obvious for so long. Guy Benson, crystal ball, great to see you both. Thanks very much for